Pets Add Life, your guide to the latest in pet trends, products, and the joy of the human-animal bond, with Kristen Levine and Chris Bonafati, powered by the American Pet Products Association and Dog TV.
Hello, dog nerds, cat geeks, and everybody in between. Welcome to another episode of the PAL Podcast. I am Chris Bonafati, joined as always by the wonderfully whimsical Kristen Levine. Kristen, How are we doing?
We're on the W's now, huh? Wonderfully whimsical?
We're on the W's. I think I lost track somewhere around Global Pet Expo. I had lost track of where we were in the alphabet, so I'm trying on some different stuff. That was like an adverb and an adjective there instead of two adjectives.
That's pretty cool. I'm excited for our next show when you get to the X's.
Yeah, the X's is going to be tough. Send in suggestions for X. And you know what? Does EX count? I don't think so. I think like we'll have to. And there's only like one adjective I could think of that starts with an X, and it's not a positive one, and it's not something I would associate with you at all.
I can expect an insult next week.
No, I can't even. I don't even think I should be saying that word on air. Nonetheless, we've got an awesome episode lined up for everybody today. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see I'm playing a home game today. I'm sort of in between offices, so enjoy the lovely view of my actual living room and my actual posters and my actual corgi pillow, which is a change of pace. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a visit from Tiger the cat. Who knows? Maybe my wife will bust in through the living room forgetting I'm recording, and we'll have to do a second
That would be awesome.
Which is usually something maybe we'll get some good bloopers out of this. But
kitty,
other than that,
kitty.
No, she's upstairs right now, and it's the middle of the day. She can't hear me anyway. She can't hear you. It's the middle of the day. The sun is shining. We have a beautiful day here in Connecticut. She will not be coming downstairs for any reason.
Let's get into it. It's story time.
Kristen and Chris present Story Time.
Kristen, I'm going to go ahead and let you go first this time. Put you on the spot.
Such a gentleman. My story is more of a kind of a news flash. I want to share some important health information for our pet parents listening. So the Companion Animal Parasite Council didn't know there was such a thing. They just released their 2025 forecast maps that show where our pets face the highest risks for common parasite diseases. So maybe I'll give Ron a link to this so you can actually see the maps for yourself in the show notes. But here's the basic takeaway. The maps track 4 major threats to our pets that are all spread by ticks or mosquitoes. So, and as we know, it's spring, so it's flea, tick, mosquito time. Now for Lyme disease, which is probably the one that most pet parents are familiar with, the highest risk remains in the Northeast and the upper Midwest. But they are showing now that it's spreading south and west into new territories. So that's important to know so that when you take your pet to the vet for their annual visit, if your veterinarian recommends a Lyme disease vaccine, that's probably something you should consider. Also, there are a couple of other tick-borne diseases that are kind of lumped into this tick fever category. They can cause fever, lethargy, joint pain, and more severe issues if they're left untreated. And those are spreading from the Northwest to the upper Midwest. And then finally, for heartworm disease, which is typically considered a Southeast issue for pets. It continues to be a high risk in the Southeast, but it's also expanding across the middle of the country. So even some new hotspots are developing in the Western states. So sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I think it's important for us all to be aware so that when our vet recommends vaccines, maybe that they haven't recommended in the past, that you understand why. And basically what it means is year-round protection against fleas, ticks, and mosquitoes is now important, really, no matter where you live. The whole idea of a seasonal approach to parasite control is kind of outdated, unfortunately. So there you have it.
Knowledge is power. And we're gonna take a hard pivot here from that super informative segment from Kristen and get some utter Chris nonsense here. So I'm on my phone. And obviously, like my doom scroll is just all animals, right? I do it for work. I do it for fun. I have a pet. So it's just all animal stuff. And I come across this headline that here the headline was kangaroo causes collision, stops traffic. And I'm like, okay, that's probably, I guess, Australia, right? Like, that's Australia. On Alabama highway. Alabama. Yes. So, okay. This is out of Macon County. I'm not sure how they're pronouncing things down there in Alabama, but this kangaroo busted out of a petting zoo and was basically sprinting down Interstate 85 with, the animal control guy, the state police officers, and all the other regular traffic. So everybody, all the people they interviewed for this is just as enamored as we are, because I didn't believe it. Nobody believed it. I'm looking at him. It's a kangaroo, fellas, in Tuskegee, Alabama. Like, this is the most ridiculous thing. So yeah, there was a small collision between cars that were trying to get out of his way. Kangaroo was not harmed. He was eventually tranquilized by animal control and returned back home. He is perfectly safe. Nobody was injured in the crash. It was more really just like a little fender bender. But can you imagine? You're in Tuskegee, Alabama. You're in Macon County. You do not expect to be driving on your morning commute and look outside and see a kangaroo keeping pace with you in traffic. That's just not something you see.
Not only that, but animal control in Macon County probably doesn't know how to catch a kangaroo. So I guess that's why they had to tranquilize them.
I don't think anyone in the United States would know, like, hey, here's all right. Oh, it's kangaroo, code kangaroo. Let's go get our kangaroo gear. Let's go. right. Call the kangaroo guy.
Call the kangaroo capture.
Yeah, call the kangaroo capture. Big props to them for being able to take care of the situation safely, because that's certainly a unique one.
I'll tell you what, if I'm stuck in traffic, I'd be happy to learn this, because there's a kangaroo hopping down the interstate, but safely captured, as opposed to something much worse.
Yes.
Beyond the Leash, exploring the untold stories of pet passion and professionalism.
All right. Please join me in welcoming our guest, Krista Chadwick. She serves as the Vice President of Shelter Services at the ASPCA. And in this role, Krista oversees national shelter outreach programs, including animal relocation efforts that transport over 40,000 animals annually, shelter medicine services, and initiatives that are targeting at-risk communities. Additionally, she manages the ASPCA's Adoption Center and Kitten Nursery in New York City, which collectively care for and place over 5,000 animals every single year. Welcome, Krista.
Hi, I'm excited to be here, and everybody always smiles when they say Kitten Nursery, so I love that.
Yes.
I know, Kitten Nursery. I'm like,
it's
sign me
up.
It's a
very good buzzword. Yeah.
I'd like to volunteer at the Kitten Nursery, please. Sounds like a great stress reduction exercise.
Totally.
So, Krista, can you tell us a little bit about how your journey in animal welfare has led to your current role at the ASPCA?
Wow. Yes, I would be happy to. Actually, this has been my career from day one. So in college, I majored in marketing and public relations. Which may seem like a strange connection, but part of that included an opportunity to a work placement, if you will. And one of the alumni from the same program actually led the communications department at the Toronto Humane Society. I'm Canadian. And so I reached out to her and said, hey, I like animals. You have a work opportunity. I would love to do this. And so that was my first gig, was with that department at the Toronto Humane Society, where probably no surprise to you all, and certainly no surprise to anyone who works in sheltering, you do a bit of everything. So I had communication, some public relations, as well as humane education was part of my gig there. And that was some time ago. And I've just carried on in my career ever since. Most of my roles have been in Canadian organizations, so the Ontario SPCA, the British Columbia SPCA. And I connected with the ASPCA because I wanted to change up how we were doing adoptions at the Ontario SPCA animal shelters. There was a number of them across the province. And that's how I connected with the amazing people at the ASPCA, and ultimately how I landed here. And that was 14 years ago this past January. So it's been a real privilege to work for a national organization who has such wide-reaching impact. But yeah, I've been in animals ever since college.
Well, you're among like-minded individuals. I think Kristen and I both have kind of been in this. Kristen, maybe just a couple years longer than me, but hey, I'm a big numbers guy though. And in that introduction, I saw a big old number, 40,000 animals being moved annually by your relocation program. So I'm curious to know, and for the curiosity of our listeners, what that relocation program entails, and maybe some of the key challenges that you've had to overcome managing such a vast operation.
Great question. Yeah, it's a very big and very complex program. It is the largest in the United States in terms of moving animals from point A to point B. And the whole intention there is to support organizations who have basically too many animals in their care and in their community to places where they have a better opportunity for a positive outcome. And so we partner with a couple hundred organizations through that program. We actually have more we refer to them as sources. So where we pick up the animals, those are our source agencies, and then we move them to our destination partners. And over the course of, I would say since COVID, so over the course of the last 6 years or so, the relocation landscape has changed quite a bit. It was quite easy for us to move all the animals that our source agencies needed placement for to destinations. We had lots of destination partners, and it was, I wouldn't say simple or easy, but it was, we had enough space to move all of those animals. We could move a truck full, 50 animals in one truck to one destination, and they would have no problem placing them. Over the course of the last several years, and certainly within the last couple of years, we've seen that change quite a bit as adoptions have leveled off in many of our destination communities. And so we have actually more sources who want to be part of the program than we can actually manage at this point, because we just don't have enough destination shelters to say yes. But that program, the partnership between those sources and destinations is really important, as you can imagine. And we work really hard to make sure that what the destination shelters are looking for in terms of types of animals are what we can provide them through the sources. But those destinations also realize that it's a very different community, a very different dynamic. Those source shelters are really quite overwhelmed with the number of animals coming into their building. And so our destination partners are generally really open-minded and generous in terms of taking whatever those sources need to get moved, so that we can together and collectively save as many of those animals as possible. It's often the one of the only positive outcome opportunities for those animals from source shelters. And we're just coming up on moving our 300,000th animal through that program, actually, which is remarkable. And we've been moving more cats over the past couple of years than we have seen previously as well. There's much more demand for cats in a number of those communities. So that's been a really nice development.
That's fantastic. I want to ask you about shelter medicine, but before I do, I just wanted to let you know, we have not only are our names similar, but we had a similar start. My first job in the pet world was doing PR for the SPCA in Tampa Bay. And I thought I would ask you if you could clarify, because this continues to be a source of confusion for people. What is the difference between the ASPCA and the SPA shelters around the country?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, because it does come up often. And so the ASPCA is a national organization. We partner with local agencies like the Tampa SPCA, SPCA of Texas, all kinds of agencies across the country in a variety of programs, one of which I just talked about, which was our relocation program. So we partner with them. We provide grant funds and training. We often respond with those side by side with those agencies in disaster response and cruelty, et cetera. But we don't directly operate or support those organizations or sort of run their day-to-day operation. They have their own board of directors. Right. They do their own fundraising locally. They have their own volunteers and their own staff. So we don't directly operate, again, that network of shelters. Instead, we partner with them to help them deal with the most pressing issues facing animals in their communities. And like I said, we do that in a variety of ways, community medicine. We also, though, as a national organization, we do operate some of our own buildings, if you will, across the country. We have spay-neuter clinics, primary pet care clinics. We operate our adoption center and kitten nursery, as you mentioned, in New York City. So we do have some of our own places where we have hands-on animals and are providing that care directly. But much of our work is really through those partnerships with local community organizations, including giving out tens of millions of grant funds to those organizations to support the things that they raise their hand and saying they need more support with. But that's the key difference. We don't directly operate those organizations.
Great explanation. And so to my other question about shelter medicine, the work that you do with shelter medicine, is that limited to the ASPCA organization, or how does that trickle down to the partner shelters that you work with?
So it's a bit of both. So we offer consults with organizations, again, across the country. So we have one of the departments within Shelter Services consists of our Shelter Medicine Services team, which is a group of board-certified shelter medicine veterinarians. And through that department, we also operate a shelter medicine residency program where we are training and supporting up-and-coming shelter medicine specialists, which is a really exciting opportunity. And so we offer those services and that expertise to shelters who, again, raise their hand through aspcapro.org. There's a form they can submit there that where we can provide them support with anything from how do we start a vaccination on intake program all the way through to we're having a parvo outbreak in our shelter and we just don't know how to handle it. So it's a small team. It's only six individuals. But we offer a lot of those consults virtually because a lot of those things we can do via phone or like this through Zoom or other online platforms. But we also will show up boots on the ground when the situation warrants and when there's a need for some more intensive support to be provided by that team.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you also have initiatives that focus on specific at-risk communities, such as the Northern Tier Shelter Initiative. Can you elaborate a little bit on the goals and the impacts that you could have on these kinds of communities with initiatives like that?
Yeah, certainly. So that program is focused on 7 of the more northern states in the U.S. And the reason for that focus is those they're very rural generally, and they often don't have the opportunity to connect with each other and are sometimes overlooked by other organizations in terms of providing support. And so we have, again, a tiny team. It consists of 4 people, 3 of which are the shelter consultants, if you will. And they have really developed over the 10 years of that program some really deep and meaningful partnerships and relationships with those organizations. Again, helping them, and they are showing up on the regular in those organizations, helping them with, again, grant funds, which are always needed, but also with some guidance and support, ranging in everything, again, from how do we implement a sanitation program that will help prevent our cats from getting upper respiratory infections all the time, through to how do we launch a really meaningful foster and volunteer program. And I think the key with that program has been those relationships and really the longevity, right? Some of these things, some of the turnaround that these shelters want to engage in takes time and can change in the heartbeat if leadership changes, right? And so having a consistent presence like this ASPCA team has meant those organizations have been able to make that change and stick to it over time. Because some of those are also philosophical changes, right? So things like adoptions. A lot of organizations may still focus on a more closed adoption process, if you will, which means you're filling out usually a very lengthy application. They may be calling for references, doing a whole lot of work to make sure that you're the perfect fit for that pet. and changing that philosophy to one that really is more engaging, more conversational, really respects the person in front of you, that they're coming with their own life experience and probably know a thing or two about owning a pet already. So making that shift and thinking differently about that relationship doesn't happen overnight. And I think having a partner like the ASPCA in those moments can be really helpful, both in terms of bringing your staff along, but also helping your community understand why that's a positive way, a positive shift in your operation. So I think that's been a really key part of that relationship, and of many of our relationships, frankly, with shelters across the country, is that we partner with, we try not to show up and do or tell. We really respect that the local organization knows their community best, right? And knows their own challenges and opportunities. And we just want to work beside them to make the changes that they see will be most impactful for at-risk animals.
Yeah, love that. I'm just realizing how many different hats you wear, Christine. So
I try not to look
you also
that often.
right. Yeah. So you also manage the adoption center and the kitten nursery. Those obviously have their own unique challenges, but how do those two facilities, how do those integrate with the overall mission at the ASPCA?
Yeah, that's a great question. So they are, they're a physical facility, as you said, in New York City. We also have an equine adoption center in Oklahoma, which maybe we'll get to talk about in a moment too.
Cool.
But for the adoption center and kitten nursery specifically, those, while they are local, a lot of what they're learning about in those communities is really translatable and important to the rest of the field. So the adoption center specifically partners with our New York City AC&C, a really excellent partner, the Animal Care and Control Agency in New York City. And we try to take from them the dogs and cats that need extra. They have a little more medical need, a little more behavioral need. And we'll take them into our facility and learn a bit, not just about that animal in front of us, but also about what does it take to get that animal to a place where they're ready for adoption. And from that learning, we are able to talk to the broader field about, here's what we're seeing. Here are the types of things that have actually made a difference for this type of behavior or this type of medical challenge. And that has been really useful and beneficial. And for the kitten nursery, I know it's surprising, but teeny tiny kittens are often very much the most at risk in most organizations across the country. Their needs are very intensive. It's bottle feeding every 2 hours overnight. And the reason that program is very relevant, again, is because it's happening across the country. Everybody has kittens coming in, especially at this time of year. And the most powerful thing that program has evolved into is that I think over 90% of the kittens who come into us through that program spend time in foster care. And that's really powerful, as you can imagine, not just for that kitten who gets the benefit of being raised in a home, has 24-hour sort of someone watching them and taking care of them, but it also means that our resources at the kitten nursery can be applied to those kittens who need a little more, right? Who maybe can't go to foster because they have some extra medical or some behavior. So instead of caring for everybody in our physical building, we're engaging the community to help us so that we can spend our resources and time on the ones that really need more than your average kind of foster home may be able to provide. So I think those two programs really are helping us learn more about what it takes to care for these at-risk populations.
And those people who foster newborn kittens,
Right.
baby kittens, they're incredible people, because it is not easy. They are not easy animals to take care of. They seem to have no survival instincts, and they're almost as demanding as a human baby. And so those are phenomenal people. So hats off to them.
Special.
Before we let you go here, Krista, I kind of want to give you an open-ended question on just anything that the ASPCA may be working on in the future, anything that you want our listeners to know about, or any call to action where maybe they could pitch in and help.
So I just talked a little bit about adoption and fostering, and the ASPCA just last year actually launched a Rescue Effect campaign, which was primarily public facing, which was helping the public really understand that by adopting or fostering one, you're helping many more, right? You're freeing up space for another at-risk animal to get the care they need in your local organization. So as a continuation of the campaign this year, we just announced $2 million in grants to support adoptions and operations at animal welfare organizations this year coming up. The campaign will run from August through to October of this year, and we'll be supporting those grantees in offering fee-waived adoptions in their communities so that the public has a really easy way to show up and either foster or adopt, hopefully, right, or volunteer, advocate, or donate, whatever that may be. So again, putting the spotlight on the shelter in your community and how you can really help them, and how for some people they may hear there's so many animals in need, I don't know how to help. If you just help one, even if it's just a temporary foster of 2 weeks, it means that so many more animals in your community can get the care they need. And we're using our voice and our ability to talk to the public in a big way to help local shelters really reach their communities and engage them in helping as many animals as they can.
Very well said. You mentioned several small but mighty teams that you have there doing great work, and great to point out that just making that small fostering gesture makes a mighty impact on the other animals in need. So thank you so much for joining us today. And where can our listeners learn more about what you're up to at the ASPCA?
So aspca.org is our main site for the public. We also have a site that's for sheltering professionals, which is aspcapro.org, where if you're working or volunteering in a shelter, you can get access to all kinds of information, training, grants, webinars, etc. So both of those are great venues for you to get more intel about us.
Amazing. So if you're listening, be sure to check that out. Krista, thank you so much for joining the Krista squad here. Just a mouthful of Chris.
Awesome.
We really appreciate you taking the time. You are an absolute superhero. So thank you so much for all the hard work you do.
Well, thank you guys. It was great fun.
Well, it was great having Krista on. Folks like Krista do such important work in our little industry here, helping animals get adopted. And I think we have a little treat because just this past week, Dog TV has launched some new content. I'm gonna let this little video here speak for itself. So let's roll the clip.
They're waiting for a second chance, for a forever home, for someone like you. This season, The Adoption Show is back, bigger, better, and saving more lives than ever. Join us as we feature amazing adoptable dogs from shelters across the country, share expert advice from top veterinarians and trainers, and bring you the most heartwarming adoption success stories. Because every dog deserves a home, and every home deserves a dog. The Adoption Show, Season 2, coming soon to Unleashed by Dog TV.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and it says coming soon. It's available now. Bingeable television. Bingeable television, let me tell you. And it's out now. Check it out on Dog TV.
Yes.
If that's where you're watching the PAL podcast, thank you. If it's not where you're watching the PAL podcast, you're missing out on our beautiful, well-rested, highly moisturized faces. and that's just your loss. It is my honor to introduce our next guest, Dr. Victoria Carmela, who's a seasoned veterinarian with over 15 years of experience in clinical practice, emergency medicine, and pet wellness. A graduate of Ross University School of Veterinary Medicine, she has dedicated her career to helping pets thrive, whether through hands-on care, hospital leadership, or advancing pet nutrition. She also serves on the board of the Animal Cancer Foundation, supporting research and innovative pet health. Dr. Vicky, your work is incredible and so important. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
So let's just jump into, I want to start with the Animal Cancer Foundation. And I think there's probably a lot of our listeners who aren't aware that there is an Animal Cancer Foundation. So what are some of the key initiatives and what is that foundation currently focusing on?
Sure. So Animal Cancer Foundation, gosh, I've gotten I've been involved with the organization for several years. Probably over a decade ago is when I first heard about this organization and was just moved by what their mission is. And so what we focus on is finding a cure for cancer, period. The main topic that ACF is really focused on is comparative oncology, which is something that most people don't know about. And that looks at cancer across different species. So if we think about a lot of cancers that happen in dogs primarily, and in people, particularly childhood cancers, there's a lot of similarities. So you think about like childhood osteosarcoma, which is a type of bone cancer. That's something that's very prevalent in dogs, and they share a lot of the same characteristics. So this study of comparative oncology allows us to understand how these cancers work in animals, how they work in people, and what we can learn from each other cross species to find treatments and cure these diseases.
Wow, that's really smart. Now I know, Dr. Vicky, that you actually transitioned from at one point co-owning a private veterinary practice to leading veterinary services at Blue Buffalo, obviously focusing on nutrition, which often plays into cancer and cancer research. What motivated this shift for you, and how did all of your varied experience influence your approach to the work you're doing now with the foundation?
Yeah, gosh, I've worn a lot of different hats, right? And when I think about my own pets and I think about the pets that I'm seeing in practice, what are the few things that we have control of? And it's what we feed them every day. And you think about over 70% of the immune system is in your gut or is in an animal's gut. And so what we're putting into our bodies and into our animals' bodies really does impact their health and their overall well-being. I was so moved to join Blue Buffalo because that company was founded by a family that dealt with cancer in their dogs. And they started to evaluate products on the marketplace, animal nutrition products. And they started looking at all of the things in those products and how they didn't necessarily contribute to the health and well-being of animals. And so that was the premise of the founding of Blue Buffalo. And that really resonated with me. And it resonated with me as someone that's always been nutrition focused, as well as always finding ways of how can I improve the health of my pets? Look, I have to feed them every day. So let me make sure that I'm giving them the highest quality, that I'm giving them ingredients with purpose that can actually support immune health, support gut health, and just drive overall well-being. And so that's how I got into nutrition.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, for those of us out there who may be listening to your wise words, Dr. Vicky, and thinking, wow, I should probably do better and feed my dog a better product. How can I identify those types of ingredients? How can I identify a nutritional plan that is going to be optimally beneficial to my dog?
Yeah, it's tricky because you walk into a pet store, there's a million and one options.
Yep.
The marketing on all of these products is phenomenal. So it's really, really hard. It's hard as a veterinarian to decipher, what's good, what's bad. And so I always say, work with your veterinarian. There's so many different feeding philosophies out there. Some fresh food, some prefer a kibble. So work with your veterinarian to find what makes sense for you, for your lifestyle, for your pet's needs. And then from there, you can distill down into, okay, if I have this particular feeding philosophy, or I need this particular type of food. For example, I have a Chihuahua with no teeth left. She only wants canned food. So now I have to look for a different diet for her than I would for my labs, who will eat anything that's hard and crunchy. So, you really just, it's having to find like what makes sense for your pet and then work with your veterinarian. There's a ton of information out there. Some of it's great, some of it's not so great. Your veterinarian is the best source of truth.
Yeah, and since we're on the nutrition topic, I have to ask, how does obesity or overweight, a pet being overweight, does that increase the likelihood of them potentially developing cancers?
Yeah. So when we look at obesity, if you think about really any disease process that affects any organ, obesity is going to be a top contributor of that. It impairs organ function. It impairs overall immune health. So certainly obesity is a common, I would say a risk factor, not cause, but risk factor for cancer development, as it is for so many things, cardiovascular disease, so many different causes. So the problem with that is that we see over 2/3 of pets are overweight or obese. And so, I keep referring back to my labs, but a lot of folks look at my labs and they say, oh, they're too skinny. I'm like, no, this is how they're supposed to look. They're in great shape. And so really keeping our pets in optimal shape, not only for disease prevention, reducing the risk factors for cancer development, but also for overall health, osteoarthritis. There's so many things that weight can impact.
It's funny that you mentioned that about people thinking your dogs are underweight. I just had dinner with a friend at their house, and they have a lab chow mix. And they said, oh, so what do you think of, his name is Bolt. What do you think of Bolt? I said, Bolt's chubby. And they were shocked. They could not believe that their dog was overweight. And then I explained to them how I could tell. So yeah, a lot of education that needs to happen with pet parents who just really don't know what to look for in terms of, obviously excessive obesity is obvious, but just being overweight isn't necessarily obvious to the pet parent.
No. And for a long time, it wasn't obvious to veterinarians either. So we now call it like the fifth vital assessment is a nutrition assessment, a body condition score assessment. It's something we should be doing every year at our annual visit or twice a year if we have pets that are, visiting more frequently, and really looking and saying, like, what are we feeding? Is it the right amount? Is there an underlying metabolic disease that might contribute to a pet's weight gain or weight loss? And really evaluating total health, because weight is such a critical part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of pet parents just sort of follow like the boxes instruction on how to feed. And let me tell you something right now. If they're trying to sell pet food, they're going to tell you to overfeed that pet 10 out of 10 times. And then you're going to have your cat in the vet's office with like the diagram of shame, I call it, where they it has like the really fat cat and the vet's like pointing at it like, that's you. You're over here. You gotta diet. And you really do want to avoid that. I want to pivot back to the Animal Cancer Foundation. And are there any sort of stretch goals or particular projects, something that you're like really proud of having either been a part of or currently a part of, that maybe our listeners should be aware of? Maybe there's something out there that they could be supporting right now?
Yeah, Animal Cancer Foundation has funded so much incredible work, again, in this area of comparative oncology. The thing that I'm most proud and most, passionate talking about is the Canine Cancer Genome Project. So we call it CCGP because it's a mouthful, right? But the goal is to map tumor genomes of the most common canine cancers, some of which are very common in people as well. That study is a multi-year study. As you can imagine, this is something that takes an immense amount of effort from many organizations. ACF has spearheaded this. Right now, there's different phases of this study. Earlier this year, they talked about being in phase 2, looking at genomics and proteomics of particular cancers like canine osteosarcoma, B-cell lymphoma, and soft tissue sarcoma. So they're in that process right now, working with leading researchers across the country at distinct universities. So, that's something that's ongoing. That's at the heart of what we do. We also recently had a research update looking at CAR T therapy for dogs with B-cell lymphoma. That work is being led by Dr. Mason at UPenn. And that therapy has been around in human cancer treatments. And basically what it looks at is the body's own immune response to recognize and attack cancer cells. So Dr. Mason is spearheading this. We have been privileged to fund it historically, and in hoping that we can improve cancer care, again, both for people and for pets.
Dr. Vicki, what are the most common canine cancers, and do each of those have a direct tie or relationship to human cancers?
So great question. I am certainly not an oncologist. I'll tell you what I see most often in practice. Lymphomas are very common. osteosarcoma, which is a bone cancer, mast cell tumors, which are cancers that we typically see in the skin but can be in other organs, soft tissue sarcomas. Actually, one of my labs behind me, you can't see him, unfortunately was diagnosed with a soft tissue sarcoma last year. Those are things that we commonly see.
And in what percentage? Well, I'm sure it varies widely, but let me change my question. What would you tell pet parents to watch for with regard to any type of cancer? And I keep thinking of more questions. And are certain cancers tied to certain breeds?
Yes. So certain breeds definitely have genetic predispositions to particular types of cancers across the gamut. So, I'm trying to think of some examples. There's so many out there. So certain breeds, so you always want to talk to your veterinarian, do your research when you're thinking about getting particular breeds. And that shouldn't be like a stopgate. I'm not going to get this breed because it's prone to this disease. It just makes you aware of what to look for.
Yeah.
Things that I always say, easy things for pet owners is we're looking at our pets every day. We're feeling them everywhere. Don't take little bumps for granted and say, I'm not going to pay attention to that. If you notice a bump, a red mark on the skin, something unusual, something new, absolutely bring that to your veterinarian's attention. A lot of these subcutaneous or under the skin growths can develop into other things. So we want to pay attention to that. And then dermal or skin growths, like we talked about, those mast cell tumors, they can often just look like a red mark or a new, you might think it's like a new wart or something like that, but always get those checked. I think as pet owners, that's the best thing we can do. We're petting our dogs and cats all over. So if anything is changing, if anything is new, if their appearance is different, absolutely being proactive is the number one way that we can find a cure. So early diagnosis, so important. So yes, my poor dogs, they're stuck with me as a veterinarian. And I'm constantly like feeling them everywhere, touching everything, and they're used to it now. But yes, examining them and making sure that you're getting them checked up routinely. So going to your veterinarian every year, twice a year if you have a senior pet, more often if you have a puppy, don't skip those visits, because there's so often that I'll be doing an exam in the room and I'm like, gosh, have you felt this before? And even the most diligent owners are like, no, I didn't even know that was there. So, just being really on top of getting those physical exams is really important.
Dr. Vicki, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge, sharing your knowledge with us today. Wow, that was an awesome chat with her. She's amazing.
Yeah, single-handedly tripled the IQ in the room by being on the podcast.
Yes.
Absolutely incredible. But Dr. Vicki did pull a Chris and messed up the website of her own foundation. So the correct website, and it's going to be in the show notes, is acfoundation.org. Not there it is, acfoundation.org. It's okay. Happens to the best of us, me included. But all the other information, other information that Dr. Vicki shared with us is critical and correct. So listen, do that preventive care, do those checkups, and pay attention to your pet.
The product of the week.
All right, Kristen, it's time for our product of the week. And I've got a fun one. I've got a little fun one that is a nice solution. You know how much we love our solution-oriented pet products.
Oh, yes, we do.
Here's my sales pitch, and this comes from Paw Ready Incorporated. So Paw Ready, if you need a new salesperson, you know where to find me. Do you have so much trouble brushing your dog's teeth? Is he constantly trying to bite your hand or bite the brush or swallow that their toothpaste? Well, have I got the solution for you? This is really cool stuff. They call it the Bite Block, and it's essentially a silicone ring that you put your finger through, and then like a little bite grip. So you smear that with just like a little bit of like peanut butter or any like loose treat. And the dog will just sort of bite on that, And it's sort of like when you get the x-rays at the dentist and they have you bite
Oh, yeah.
on this sort of thing. It's that same thing. It holds it does a really good job of just holding their jaw in place with their mouth open the way it's shaped. And then you get your little toothbrush and your little doggy. They sell like a peanut butter and bacon flavored doggy toothpaste. And you go in there and you can brush. And you know what the best part about this stuff is?
What?
It's like $8.
That's it?
Okay, it's $12.97. The toothbrush is $7, and you could get a toothpaste subscription for $20 a year. So,
That's not bad, actually. I thought you were gonna
this
say
is
a
really not one where I'm breaking the bank. Their toothbrush is really cool. It's a dual-sided, or for your Star Wars nerds, it's a Darth Maul toothbrush there, a little double-sided toothbrush. One with a much smaller head for their little teeny tiny teeth, and then one with the larger head for their big old canines. So I just think it's a really just like one of those simple products, not going to break the bank. But again, it solves a problem that a lot of pet parents have. I mean, my parents, when they got our dog, gave up on doing like toothbrushing very quickly and moved on to like like rope treats and greenies and Nylabones and stuff like that. But if you've got a dog who specifically needs it, right, that maybe they have some type of gum disease, maybe they don't eat the greenies or something like that, and this is something you need to do, this is a great solution.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to checking that out. Is there like a demo? Do they show how?
Yeah, there is
works?
a demo. They have all sorts of videos on how to use it. And the bite blocks are organized by size. So I think you'd be looking for pets 5 to 15 for Tulip.
Yep. That's about
there
right.
You go.
Yeah. And she had, little dogs, they have their teeth are so tight together, so they actually are more susceptible to, not that other dogs aren't susceptible, but it's even more important if you have a little dog to keep those teeth clean. So I'm going to check that out. Good one. So my product of the week is something that I use every single day. It's the Earth Rated Pet Grooming Wipes. Comes in like you can get different size packs, but it's in like this plastic thing that you peel off that keeps them moist when you close it up, as opposed to one of those cans that you pull them out like a Kleenex, which those never stay damp. Anyway, these are perfect for like a quick cleanup solution for your pet's paws when they come in from outside, from their body, and for their tush between baths or after outdoor adventures. So they come in. I love this. These scents that they come in: unscented lavender, white tea, and basil. So if you want your dog's body to smell like white tea and basil, or wild oat. They have soothing natural ingredients like aloe, shea butter, chamomile, and cucumber. And those apparently help to clean while hydrating the skin. They're pretty good size, 8x8, so they're not too big, not too little. And I keep a pack in my car, and I keep a pack right by the door where Tulip comes in and out. And I'll tell you why I wanted to feature this product today, because we talked about spring and parasites. Well, spring is also a time when there are more allergens in the air, and
as you know, remind me of that.
as you know, Chris. But I learned a tip from Dr. Marty Becker many years ago. He said, your pet is like a little Swiffer. They are walking so low to the ground, so they're picking up all those allergens that are getting like dusted up as you walk around. And if you just simply take a pet wipe when they come in and just wipe their whole body down and their feet, you're eliminating a lot of the allergens that they just picked up, and possibly even, parasites and dirt, of course. So I think it's a really good practice to get in, to just have those pet wipes right by the door and use them every time your pet comes in.
Yeah. We recently dog sat for my brother-in-law's dog. And, it's spring here in New England. So there was one day that it was nice and rainy, and I did not have pet wipes ready. And these muddy paws, man, I've got a beautiful white carpet in here.
Oh,
I was fighting with like a towel. The dog was not enjoying it. It was tough. It was tough. I'm much better at handling cats than dogs. And because the dog, I was trying to communicate with the dog. I was like, can you please sit? Just be still 1 second. Let me go get a towel. And of course, the dog sat as soon as I go upstairs to get the towel all around.
Right.
And could have used those wipes in my pocket. All that trouble would have been. Now I'm shampooing my carpets. So it is what it is.
Well, you'll be prepared next time.
Yeah, I will be prepared next time.
Q&As.
Okay, Kristen, it's time for our favorite segment of the show. That's right, we're going to answer 2 questions from our lovely audience. And I know what you're thinking, dear listener. How do I get my burning question answered by Chris and Kristen? Well, the answer is quite simple. Head on over to petsadlife.org/podcast. Scroll on down to the bottom of the page. You'll see a form to submit your question. Or if you're feeling as brave as a kangaroo on I-85 in Alabama, you could submit a voice memo. And drum roll, please. We do have a voice memo today. So
awesome.
we're gonna go ahead and kick it off with that. Ron, play the tape.
Hi, this is Shelly from Oregon. I watched the first podcast where you were speaking about the yellow lab puppy that you had adopted from the SPCA. My podcast got cut off when you were explaining about coming home and not doing the whole, how are you all excited when you come home? I have a Queensland healer that I adopted when he was 3 months old. He's 7 months old now. He's a good boy, but he's a lot of energy. And if you could just continue on and explain how you were able to stop that separation anxiety and help him. I think it ended with you did have to medicate him. If you can explain maybe what you used. I've tried a couple calming chews, but it seems to do the opposite with him. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Shelly.
Wow,
And I think I heard
awesome.
the dog in the background there, which is that is an A+ voice memo. Kristen, I think you're going to be the expert here, though. I think this one's for you.
Yeah, and wow, she was really paying attention on that first episode. I didn't remember that I talked about.
She's got Pets Ad Life trivia all prepared.
Yeah. Well, Shelly, thank you for your question. And I will say that your situation, you're in a better spot than I was, because at the time that we adopted Buck, I didn't know anything about separation anxiety. And unfortunately, it wasn't until he was much older, like maybe 6 or 7 years old, before we actually got him seen by a veterinary behaviorist. And yes, he did need to be medicated, but we ultimately got it to a point where the medication was perfect. It didn't make him drowsy, and he was able to, live a really happy, comfortable life. But your dog is much younger, and that's good. You've already noticed those signs. So separation anxiety is seen in about 35% of dogs. So it's not uncommon at all. And like you mentioned, Shelly, some of the things they tell that veterinarians will recommend is that you not make a big deal about coming home. It's hard to do because your dog is so happy to see you, and you want to show just as much happiness to see them, but you want to kind of downplay your arrival. And you also want to, some of this is stuff you can implement now, and then I'll get to the point about talking to your veterinarian. Start with just taking short departures. And I always say to Tulip, I say, be right back. And she doesn't know if that I say be right back, whether it's going to be 10 minutes or 5 hours, but I don't know. I think she truly understands that I will be back. And so short departures, start with maybe just a minute or two at first, gradually increase the time as your dog remains calm. So that's why you want to start at really short departures first. So you're kind of rewinding for your dog to try to get him back on the path of not being so anxious when you're gone. You want to practice your leaving routine without actually leaving. And the reason for that is to desensitize your dog to the trigger that you are leaving. So that means putting on your shoes, grabbing your keys. I know it sounds silly and you might feel silly doing it, but this might be a way for your dog to recognize that, oh, just because she's doing those things doesn't mean I need to get all, nervous that she's leaving. And then create positive associations with alone time. It sounds like you've already tried that with the treats or the bones that you're giving him, but maybe give him a puzzle toy, something that's going to take him a little bit more physical and mental effort to work on while you're away. And then if you don't find that any of those steps are helping your dog get more comfortable with you being away, then you definitely should talk to your vet. And don't wait months to do this. Like I would in the next several weeks, have a conversation with your vet if you're not noticing any improvements in your dog, because it's really important you catch it early, because the earlier you address it, the easier it is to kind of undo some of that anxiety and, have a better, less anxious time going forward. But for me with Buck, unfortunately, I didn't really talk to a vet until he was 6 or 7, and we did need to go the medication route. So I hope that's helpful. I know there's a lot, but I appreciate you remembering that episode when I talked about Buck, and I hope this gets you some relief for your pup.
Kristen, the textbook Levine. That's what we're going to start calling you. The textbook.
Only because I've had a lot of experience.
You've got a lot of experience.
Yeah, I do. Unfortunately, not something you want to have a lot of experience with. But Chris, I have a question for you.
Shoot.
This comes from Emily in Denver, and she says, "Why does my dog eat grass? Is it something I should be concerned about?"
Why does your dog eat grass? Well, because he's hungry. That's the answer, right? Dogs are opportunistic scavenger omnivores. Like, that is how their brains are programmed. They're not like cats. They're not carnivores. They're not really all that much of a hunter even. They're closer to goats than they are to cats in terms of their diet and the way they operate in nature. So yeah, your dog's going to see grass. They're going to smell it, goes, that smells good, and eat it. And the issue with dogs is they struggle to associate delayed consequence with the action. So if that grass doesn't make them immediately feel terrible, they're going to continue to think that it's food, whether or not it results in a loose stool or them throwing up later on down the road or anything like that. So is it a problem? It's only a problem if they're getting sick, or if you live in an area where there's like a lot of poison or hyperallergenic plants. If your dog every now and again just swallows just like a little bit of crabgrass and it's completely fine. In fact, that fiber might actually be pretty good for them and help clean them out. I would talk, if there's a specific plant that your dog goes after every time, talk to your vet. Just be like, hey, he keeps going after this specific plant. Is it good for him? Is it bad for him? Whatever. But at the end of the day, if it's not making his stomach upset, if he's only taking little bites and he's not replacing his diet entirely with grass, this is just normal dog stuff. It's just normal dog stuff for them to go out there and want to bite and eat everything. So as always, you want to control the behavior and keep it within reason. But I don't think you should be taking an extreme tact if it is just some harmless outdoor scavenging and fun. That said, though, if you walk your dog and also have a run for your dog, if you have a backyard and you notice that when you're walking the dog, they're going around and they're just really biting all the grass and eating it, that means they're probably doing it when you let them out back unsupervised, in which case you're probably going to want to change that behavior, because as always, it's everything in moderation. A couple bites here or there is not going to do much damage, but again, that becomes a serious part of their diet. They're not supposed to be eating grass. And I think I've made this joke before. A dog eating grass is a lot more natural than a dog smoking grass.
I was waiting for you to say something.
That's my favorite joke. That's my favorite one I've ever made on this podcast. So I'm going to use it again.
So just keep using it.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep using it.
Great advice, Chris.
Yeah, thank you for the question. That brings us to the end of our show. I know it happens so fast.
Oh, it's so much fun. It goes by so quickly.
It does. But hey, if you're listening, share this episode with a friend, share it with an animal lover, share it with an animal hater, turn them into an animal lover. And while you're here, like, subscribe, be kind to yourself, be kind to your pets, and we're going to see you in a week.
And remember, every day is a new opportunity to be a possum pet parent.
Oh.
I know it's weak. It's weak. I know.
No, it's so
Struggling.
It's like so bad it's good. It's like that movie Spy Kids, where it's just like, this is terrible. I love it.
Pets Add Life, your guide to the latest in pet trends, products, and the joy of the human-animal bond, with Kristen Levine and Chris Bonifati, powered by the American Pet Products Association and Dog TV.